Hello, every season in free democratic country. This is Seoul. South Korea covered the English broadcast of 119 Korea TV. I'm your host, spokesman Choi Young-jae and
Dr. Choi Sung-hwan.
Dr. Choi Sung-hwan. Today's topic is about the 2021 G-7 summit to be held in 11th to 13th of June, hosted by United Kingdom next month, and about the pre-session meeting that was already held in the UK, attended by foreign ministers from the G7, United States, United Kingdoms of France, Germany, Canada, Italy, and Japan, and also three other nations, including Korea, Australia, and India. The pre-session meeting by 10 foreign ministers announced the usual political junkies as a creed, such as to call China out to talk mutual constitution with the G7 countries and North Korea to abandon its anti-human rights policies and disarmament of a mass destruction weapon in bland terms. Dr. Choi, you told me earlier last week that South Korea might not be invited or even be rejected to the 2021 G7 summit. And this sounds surprisingly enough to me, and maybe the audience watching our video at this very moment. Would you please reserve our curiosity?
Certainly, yes, I will. Yes, I did. Said when the tendency of G7 and Quad's interests become intimate with each other for more, South Korea was beleaguered, got into such awkward predicament, and is being driven into a corner. The reason is blindly obvious, but let me explain to you. After describing what Quad and the Quad Plus consist of, and which keywords of each subdivisional working groups of Quad is instituted under. 1, corona vaccine. 2 is a climate change. 3, new technology corporations, including semiconductor technology. But there is an extremely serious vulnerable point for South Korea's current Moon Jae-in regime getting involved in the Quad Plus. The current Quad behavior principle is as follows. What is the purpose of Quad? The core objectives of the Quad is to secure the rules-based global order, liberal trading system, and freedom of navigation. It seeks to contain a rising China and work against its predatory trade and economic policies. In 2021, March 11th, South Korea was consequently expelled from Quad Plus just after refusing then Secretary of State of the United States Mike Pompeo's official visit to Seoul on 2020, last year's October 7th to 8th, after his attendance at Tokyo's October 1st to 6th Quad Foreign Ministers meeting. The postponed Seoul meeting was nominally to be held in the same month later, but this did not happen. The excuse for the cancellation was ambiguous and weird. That Mike Pompeo refrained from visiting Seoul because the United States President Trump was diagnosed as COVID-19 SARS-2 positive, and this does not sound like an excuse, but a ridiculous joke to me. The United States and Japan is consistently urging South Korea to rejoin the club of Quad Plus, but this echo-like persuasion seems to be a ceremonious, cosmetic, imploration gesture. Why? Because the Quads already believe firmly that the South Korea's Moon Jae-in regime is impossible to join in the act of restraining rising China and work against its predatory trade and economic policies. Moon Jae-in's regime is pro-China, or almost frantically hail China, that it cannot brightly betray their master. Moon is willing to visit Biden by the end of May in Washington this year, immediately prior to the oncoming London G-7 summit of June 11th to 13th. But the date, this Korea and United States bilateral summit is fixed on the 21st of May. Whatever the decision may be made or a discussion be done in an one-on-one meeting in Washington, the situation in the atmosphere at the London G7 summit will be far from the results of Moon and Biden talks. The core problem is that the 2020 last year's expanded G7 invitation to Washington by Trump, which was referred to as a G10 or G11 summit, did not expose an explicit nature of anti-China allied front. Thus, the Chinese Communist Party's Xi Jinping did not show open unpleasure, though China had not been invited. Xi Jinping might have anticipated and immediately permitted South Korea's Moon Jae-in's participation without hesitation, for Moon Jae-in would perform the role of a deputy, a substitute, a proxy of China in the last year's miscarried G7. If you demand an evidence of my opinion, examine closely how the theater of high altitude area defense missile presence in South Korea led to a hang by a threat situation between US, China, and Korea, which implies that South Korea's Moon's restriction and independent position dealing in China related global policies. A strange foreign news mentioning suggests a gloomy foreboding that South Korea might be excluded from the invitation to London G7 summit and even be excluded from the current world's democratic alliance and undergo replacement by Tsai Ing-wen's Taiwan. I will show you this. The news go on as follows that omitting South Korea intentionally or by purpose, the news is mentioning only India and Australia, not Korea.
We will stand up and defend the order.
Blinken's remarks come as Beijing is becoming bolder with its ambition to lead the world order. The Chinese regime has been rapidly expanding and upgrading its nuclear arsenal, and Chinese military crafts have been frequently buzzing Taiwan's air defense zone. U.S. intelligence reports also warn that Beijing is one of America's biggest threats right now. British Foreign Minister Dominic Raab says he sees the need to hold Beijing to the commitments they've made.
Whether it's in relation to Hong Kong under the joint declaration or wider commitments, whilst also at the same time finding constructive ways to work with China in a sensible and positive manner where that's possible. That's important, I think, on global issues like climate change. We want to see China stepping up to the plate and playing its full role.
Aside from China, the 7 countries also talked about economic recovery, human rights, and food security. The G7 includes the US, the UK, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan. This year, the host UK has also invited other guests like Australia and India. The meeting is laying the groundwork for another meeting between G7 leaders next month, and President Biden is set to travel to the UK for the meeting in his very first overseas trip. Juliet Song, NTD News. The G7 includes the US, the UK, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan. This year, the host UK has also invited other guests like Australia and India. The meeting is laying the groundwork for another meeting between G7 leaders next month.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching South Korea covered through the finish. And we will do our best to reveal more hidden news that the Moon Jae-in regime is so nervous to hide. Thank you again and see you next time. This was Choi Young-jae
And Dr. Choi Sung-hwan.
Choi Sung-hwan. Thank you. Thank you very much. From Seoul, Republic of Korea. Thank you very much.